cheapest food available, which is posho, ugali. A kilo of ugali costs about 2,000. So if you convert 89 kilograms of food waste on a daily basis, it means on average, a family of 4 people, each person can waste around 178,000 per person per year. This does not include the cost of cooking, the cost of charcoal. Remember, you have cooked it, you have wasted it. It's not included. Remember, you put in transport to go to the grocery or to the market. It's not included. Let's go to a level of a family of 4 people. How much can they waste? About 700,000. I think that one is an equivalent to a moderate school in Uganda. But why, as we are wasting food, let's see the impact, the implication of food waste. Food waste does not only waste food, but it wastes energy, the one used for cooking. It wastes water, water used for cooking and cleaning, and also natural resources. Remember, this food is grown, the use of fertilizers, it's packaged, it's transported. And I think we can see that it's sad for us to waste food. The middle income earners and the high income earners, actually, there is a case where we had 1 kilogram per person per day, but it was an outlier. There was element of truth in it. 1 kilogram per person per day of food. If you try to model that scenario and see what happens at the end of the year, it's a lot of waste. case of what was happening at household levels. And now we are going to see what was happening at retailers. So this is how a typical market in Uganda looks like. And as we go on, I think even from the picture we should be able to know why we even have a lot of food waste. So these are some of the findings we found in the market we assessed in Kampala. So we worked with 5 markets, but we never got results, data from Ruzira. As you see, Kaleirwe market generates the largest volume of waste, which is around 7 kilograms per trader per day. Chitintale 1.473, Natete 1.64, and Kansanga 1.88 kilograms of food waste per person per day. So more of our findings are presented here from the households we audited. On average, households of 4 people throw away food which is equivalent to 6 kilograms on a weekly basis. But of that food, 48% can be avoided. Interventions can be taken. And 14% can be potentially avoided. And 38% is inevitable. So as we look for solutions to prevent food waste, we should bear in mind that some food waste is inevitable. So we should also come up with solutions on how we could tackle the inevitable food waste. And this is what I mean. So food that could be avoided. This is food that could have been eaten at some point, but it's not eaten because maybe data on the food is misinterpreted. For example, you may find food labeled as best before. So how does household interpret such? Best before, it can be best at this date and the expiry date. So in most cases, food is not really expired, but maybe it cannot give you the best taste if you eat at that time. And because of misinterpretation of the labels, food ends up in the dustbin. And sometimes that food can be eaten. For example, for me where I come from, for us the Bachiga, you don't peel the potatoes, you don't peel. You cook the way it is and you eat. So that one can be potentially avoided. Oh, why should you peel an apple? Why should you generate that waste? So that's the 14% I was talking about. Okay, so it shows us that as we think of the strategies to prevent, we should look at those categories and see how we could come up with suitable measures to address such challenges. So food was occurring at different stages within a household, in the kitchen, during storage, and on the plate. So some of the major causes of food waste during cooking is the kind of technology we use. So most of the technologies we use in our households have no control, especially controlling the heat. For example, if you're using charcoal stove and the charcoal is burning at the maximum, it's not like a microwave or cooker where you're going to switch the temperatures to go off at a given time with tea. So you find that food is overburnt, and it's a huge cause of food at that stage. Preference for staple food. People want to eat banana. People don't want to eat processed or dry foods. They prefer it when it is fresh because that's their staple food. One, you find that most of our staple food are associated with huge volumes of inedible waste. For example, if you peel cassava, you can imagine the volume of peelings you would generate to feed a household of 4 people. Then during storage, load shedding. For example, if you have bought fresh milk and there is load shedding, the chances are if you don't cook it on that very particular day, it's going to go bad. Unplanned shopping. Someone goes to the market, he's going to buy bananas, but he's offered a lower price on potatoes, and then he also adds it the program. So you find you buy more than you can eat in a given period. Absence of storage technologies. Most households can't afford conditioned storages, store vegetables and fruits that easily go bad. And these foods dominate our diet. Then on the plate, failure to estimate the right quantity of food that is enough for the household. Doing that math, for us we believe that food would rather stay on the plate than sleeping hungry. So it's very difficult to estimate. And sometimes it depends on the mood of the husband or what is happening at home. Failure for some members to turn up for dinner. Maybe because of alcoholism, maybe you had some issues at home. And the worst case is that people don't even communicate that I'm coming back. So often, people prepare food at home. They prepare uniform food that is supposed to be prepared on the day. It's like for leftovers. I don't know how many of us would be served maybe leftovers in the morning and takes it, maybe if it is warmed or it is cooked again, that would prefer to take it. Especially in our cultures, I think it's a sign of disrespect to serve leftovers to your husband. It's one of the causes of food. Then also, especially during COVID, failure to prepare your preferred food. People's income was affected, and the most affordable food was kosher. And we know, especially children, don't prefer this kind of food. So it was one of the causes of food waste, especially during. So that's where COVID came in to increase on the volume of food waste generated at households. So we also try to assess the causes of food waste in the market. The major cause is harvest season. In the harvest season, for example, the harvest period for matoke, it's inevitable we shall have large volume. So the supply would exceed the demand. And if supply exceeds the demand, unless you can process that kind of food, there's no way you will avoid having food waste. Failure to predict the market demand. There are different traders, there's no communication channel, there's no communication structure that is going to inform you that a given market B is saturated with a given product, maybe it's saturated with matoke. So you find 10 traders from Mbarara, 5 traders from Gulu. This link is what is happening in the market. They all offload the truck of Irish in the market, and the demand does not match the supply. Eventually we find food going bad. Middlemen speculations. The markets in Kampala are full of middlemen. And they're always paid on a commission basis. So a middleman is paid, he markets your truck of matoke, and you give him a commission as a percentage of total sales from that truck. So they will try to speculate, they will tell you, they're not buying matoke in that market. Or you wait a bit. So as you wait, the shelf life of a particular food reduces. So by the time it gets to a store, you can only afford to stay there for 1 or 2 days. Then absence of appropriate storage and I think processing technologies. Most markets sell food the way it is harvested from the gardens. no further processing. And in that case, this would require maybe conditioned storage, condition that food so that it's not affected by temperatures, as it was presented from the case of Chitintal. Then some causes of food waste are not even caused by the traders themselves, but by the stakeholders. It does not necessarily occur on trucks, but simply because the owner of the trucks overloaded the truck, you find that in such a way it affects the quality. And once the quality is affected, preference of customers change. And you find that people prefer only fresh food. And then delays in transit and distribution. You get to Kampala, you find jam. So as you're in jam, perhaps even your truck gets a problem. So you find that you have spent maybe 4 to 5 hours when the food is exposed to sunlight. In such case, you also get breakdown. The time food is supposed to be spending in the market, it spends it in the distribution channels, and eventually the shelf life of the product is affected. So here we had a case from Natete, and I think have the chairman of Natete Market can testify. Where a person bought 20 pieces of jackfruits, and because those jackfruits were transported for a long period, so on offloading, he paid for jackfruit. You can't know what is inside. But on time of selling, someone has to cut, find out that 16 pieces had gone bad. And this is happening in the market, not because it's caused by the trader or by the market, but it's originating from transit. So on average, someone is supposed to be getting a lot of money, but he was selling each piece at 20. So he was able to sell 40 and he was able to get 80,000. Now you can imagine the loss. 80%, you have made a loss of 80%. So the same case with yellow bananas and avocados. Problems originating from the stage that is outside the stages of food waste. That is originating from the stages of food loss. So also try to understand what happens to food when it is food waste when it is generated. Where does it go? Is there effort made to recycle the food we are generating? Is there effort made to recover? So the figure can tell us that little effort is made to recover or to keep food we are generating in a productive cycle. So I would comfortably say that about 90% of the food ends in the landfill or dumping sites. Because it's either collected by KCC, which is about 37%, collected by waste handling companies, dumped to local dumping site. And I think people who dump to local dumping site, they put in effort. Other people don't, they just dump in drainage channels. About 4%, they claim to be composting it for backyard use. And about 2% share it with farmers as animal feeds. Others burn it at a local site, open burning. And still 2% try to recover energy by feeding it to biodigester. So that's what happens to food. So as we see our food waste profile where it ends, we should think of interventions that could change this chart so that we see that big percentage is recovered food or repurposed food as animal feeds, or energy is recovered from the food that is inevitable. So we saw the causes. And now We also tried to understand what drives these causes. One is absence of food waste regulations. In other countries, there are areas where food that is not sold is shared with communities that are food poor or that are food insecure. But we don't have standards or regulations that maybe would allow hotels that generate a lot of unsold food to be shared with communities that are food poor. Lack of storage facilities and inappropriate handling. I know most of us would argue that this is a problem of food loss. But from our presentations, we have seen how what is happening at a given value chain is causing food waste at a consumer level. Another one is limited access to and high cost of electricity. In some cases, people don't even have access. So it's a very good excuse that they cannot condition food. And in cases where people attempt to process it, they can't afford the cost of electricity. We also don't have adequate skills and good management practice that would enable different stakeholders to address the problem. The last driver is we lack the understanding and the major causes of food waste. We don't understand what is causing it. Besides that, we also don't understand the impact of the food waste. If the impact of food waste was very clear to us, just like you apologize to your neighbors that you're very sorry that you're wasting energy, water, fertilizers, and even the labor from women who are mostly involved in agriculture, we end up generating food waste without knowing the end implication of generating waste. So what lessons did we learn from all these studies? One is that addressing food waste requires life cycle interventions instead of singular interventions. So we cannot go at households and say that our interventions are going to be focused on households. Or at a market. If you just focus on a market, problems from transit will cause you problems at a market level. We all agree that women dominate the food sector. Starting from farming to marketing it was very clear from Stinta that 70% of traders are women. So we should make such interventions inclusive, giving special consideration and integrating gender in our intervention, as we have seen that women play an important role when it comes to addressing food waste. Another thing is data. Data will give us information to come up with informed strategies or evidence-based interventions. Not a matter of trying. You need to use data, come up with different scenarios of what would happen if a given intervention is implemented, what would be the economic implications, what would be the environmental impact, and then we can take decisions based on that information we use from data. Data would also inform the market of how the demand would be in the future. We could model how the demand is likely to be. We have some data that can enable us to do that. Then also financial institutions. We need to come up with some packages that would suit the informal sector who dominate. The informal sector to innovate, come up with technologies that suit those particular sectors and business models that suits the informal sectors address the problem of food waste. Then we also need government to come in, give us an enabling environment. And I think government has done some effort, especially to the informal sectors. For example, exempting processing technologies, processors, putting exemption to informal hotels, but little attention is given to the informal sector. So we need to come up with tailored intervention, neighboring environment, targeting the informal sector that dominates the food service and food waste generation. Thank you very much for your attention. Those were the findings we had for tonight.
Thank you, Edison. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him another round of applause. A wonderful presentation. I believe this presentation sets the scene for us. We now understand why we are here. We've gone through the presentation. They've given us the objectives of the study, and he has given us the findings. So we are now all at the same footing, isn't it? So I'm going to ask him to take a seat. Another presentation, then we shall take questions after the second presentation. The second presentation is by Arcadia Hotels. It's a case study on food waste and innovation in hotels.
I've been advised that I should fit in with the technology. I take away my villagehood. I'm a villager, but it's okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what motivates us to reduce food waste? First of all, food waste, as it has been said, we used to generate 400 kilograms per week. And we were sending away that rubbish 2 times in a week. That means every time they come to take the rubbish, we spend 590,000 shillings. Now, after doing the study and aligning ourselves with the modern ways of handling waste, it was reduced. Instead of making it twice, now it is done once. In other words, we are saving. In the kitchen, we endeavor to separate. As you can see, Plastics are separate, vegetables are separate, and other things. Even outside where we normally take, because we have these, we outsource garbage collectors who come to take away. You can see here we try to separate, even the boxes we separate. But, as you have heard from the previous presenter, there are challenges. Much as we endeavor to do that, you are going to find that in the long run, as I will be explaining, those people who come to take away, they put everything again together. Now you wonder why you wasted all that effort. But we have to do it, what to do. What are Cardia Suite doing to prevent food waste? For example, at the market level, we endeavor to buy from designated and licensed traders and sellers. Why am I mentioning this? These people who are licensed, they have certain basic standards they follow, and we end up saving. But if you buy from unlicensed traders, I will show you as I continue what you are likely to suffer from. Now, when we go to the food store, what did we do? We measure, we portion, we pay attention to these principles you studied a long time ago, either FIFO or LIFO. We pay attention to first in, first out. We endeavor to label items for quick identification. And when you go to the stores, we try to put items off the ground, because once they are kept on the ground, you are going to lose a lot. In many hotels, some of them don't appreciate that. And if you went out and bothered to see, you find things are just stored on the floor. But when you tell them, do this, the excuses. But anyway, I'm talking for Acadia. In the kitchen, during cooking, again, we do pre-portion items. We endeavor to use refrigeration, deep freezers, so that whatever, as the senior colleague was mentioning here, the items which you are brought in, once they are kept well, then you minimize throwing them or discarding them. Ordering is now based on forecast. We look at the reservations, okay? And then we do ordering as per the requirement. You order what is enough. Remember, we are in the state center, so we can afford to add our stock as and when demand is. But if you are not in the state center, it is another story. Now, when we go to the dining area, again, we use a la carte menu, which is now an international standard. You sit, order, and then we prepare. We can only apply buffet when we have a confirmed booking. Now, like if this function or the next one comes to Acadia, we know that there are so many officers, men and women of integrity, then we shall go for the buffet. Other than that, it is a la carte. A la carte means sit and wait. Okay? Then, what was the impact of the measure implemented to address this? As I've said, the benefits we realized after implementing food waste reduction measures, one of them, of course, costs went down because we used transport many times. Now we transport less, and also the waste is reduced. Then there are other hidden costs in terms of manpower, in terms of detergents, in terms of all those things that we use. They have also reduced because of this. Challenges. How does Acadia face in addressing food waste? As an organization, I've told you it is a small place. We don't have very big cold rooms, which we could use to handle the food waste. Why am I saying cold rooms for food waste? Prior to joining Acadia, I had been in charge of training and standards for a branded property called Sheraton for over 12 years. Now, in such a property, we used to have a cold room whereby even garbage is kept in that room until when it is needed to be taken away. That's why you could find those days, don't ask me now, I don't know, but those days you couldn't even get rubbish smelling. And especially given our collectors who normally just dump them on the vehicles. So, one of the challenges, and I want to implore on those who are intending to have properties, make sure there is a cold room for waste. It will save you in terms of costs. Then also big containers. And I've told you this is a challenge. While we try in the kitchen, these gentlemen and ladies who come to collect garbage, they mix them. And I find this a big challenge. And what is the way forward? We look to government. Why? Because these challenges, the other colleague who talked before me mentioned, we should enact regulation which are implementable. Now, when it comes to government, I find it another challenge. Uganda, we are very pregnant with regulations, with policies. But when it comes to implementation, it is a challenge. I'm not saying a challenge here or there, but I'm saying in Uganda. Okay? Policies regarding garbage collection. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where you stay, but you follow those trucks, especially in Kampala. Garbage is flying left, right, center, and nobody cares. I'm a very proud student of Netherlands. When I was there during those days, first of all, the policy is very clear. Garbage trucks cannot even move when they have not covered the garbage, which is not here. I don't know why. But since I'm talking to the converted people, we shall sell the gospel. Ensure policies that enforce environmental product qualities. You go on the market. Whatever you buy is what you buy. But are we sure that they are all environmentally friendly as far as qualities are concerned? Again, we are gifted by nature. You'll find there those other gifts. Put systems for recycling and reuse of products. Again, when I was a student, and in those days I used to enjoy beer, we were even motivated, taking back the empties and they reward you. Such a system, I'm sure, it can enable people to recycle. I was invited some years back to set standards in Rwanda using the guidelines I have. They enforced this policy, but in Uganda up to now we have not enforced that. As you are driving, you find a big limousine, somebody is just throwing the plastic left, right. Anyway, I'm not quoting from the Bible, Lamentations. I'm just trying to say that there is a problem here. And we are calling upon the government. We still have some work to do. Promote use of biodegradable packages instead of plastics. You all agree with me. Policies have been passed. But
Good morning, and thank you all for this opportunity of presenting to you now, and thanks to my previous speakers for their amazing presentations on this important topic. So my name is Philipp Straub. I'm a co-founder and CTO of Marula Protein Limited. I'm here with my colleague Benjamin, and we are proud of our strong partnerships with KCCA and the Dutch government. At Protein, we turn organic waste into valuable feed and fertilizer. And we do this by feeding the waste from Kampala's markets to larvae of the black soldier fly. The baby larvae feed on this waste for a period of around 8 to 9 days, and during this period they completely decompose it and grow to a size 30 times their initial weight. After that period, we can harvest them, dry them, and turn them into feed. And the decomposed organic waste is a very valuable organic fertilizer. Uganda and Kampala are facing 3 very big problems. One is depleted soils, which result in low yields per acre. Another one is low access of, or a lack of access of high quality and affordable feed for livestock production. And the other problem is organic waste, which is literally flooding our cities. So let's look at these problems or challenges in more detail. One is fertilizer. And this may sound surprising for some of you, since Uganda is a very green country, but those looks can be deceiving. In fact, soils in Uganda are very prone to depletion. We have a lot of rain, and the rain is literally washing out the nutrients from the soils, and this reflects in one of the lowest yields per hectare in the world. And mineral fertilizers or chemical fertilizers don't really help, because you apply them and the rain just washes them out and they are not available anymore for the plants. In addition to that, many of the fertilizers in Uganda that farmers can buy are fake. There are studies that have shown that the fertilizers that you can buy here contain around 31% less nutrients than indicated on the label. So farmers, they get less for what they pay. Plus, Ugandan farmers pay on average already twice as much for fertilizer than their European or US American counterparts. Another big challenge is feed for livestock production. The main source of animal-derived protein for livestock production is mukene, silverfish, which are caught from the lakes and sun-dried. But there are several problems with this. Especially during the rain season, the mukene cannot be dried properly, which results in a poor quality, which sometimes gets the livestock sick and lowers the productivity. And on the other hand, there's also a lot of adulteration with this type of feed. Studies have shown that by the time the farmer buys the milled mukene, it's mixed with up to 50% sand. And on top of that, the population of silverfish is being depleted, so the supply is lowering while the demand is only increasing. And this leads to the challenges of unreliable supply, fluctuating prices, and in general, increasing prices. And that's very challenging because already in livestock production, the cost of feed account for 70% of the entire costs. Another challenge is waste. So we've heard already before that most of the waste generated in Kampala is organic waste. In some areas, it's even more than 90%. So this means that in Kampala, only if you look at organic waste, 3,100 tons of organic waste are generated every day. And currently only 40 to 50% of all of this waste is even collected. And this problem is only increasing. There are estimates that say by 2050, the generation of waste will triple in Kampala. And currently there's also no large-scale alternative for recycling of this waste in place. So what happens is almost all of the collected waste just is collected and goes to Chitesi landfill, which is a problem because Chitesi landfill is pretty far outside of Kampala and the capacity is limited. So soon it will reach its capacity limits. And on the other hand, the waste that is uncollected remains in the city. It poses a breeding ground for pathogens affecting public health. It clogs the sewerages, causing floodings, so the costs are enormous. Another challenge, or rather opportunity, that I didn't mention before is unemployment, especially amongst the youth. It's actually a huge resource that Uganda has. It's a very young population, but around 83% of the youth is without formal employment. And rapid urbanization is actually increasing the problem, and this links to the problems before. Since agriculture is becoming less and less profitable, more and more youths don't want to engage in agricultural activities and go to the cities to seek for better opportunities there, which causes even more waste generation and so on. But yeah, we have come up with a solution that can address all of these problems at once. So what we do is we turn organic waste that is delivered at our facility and feed it to the larvae. They feed for it for around 8 days until they look like here on the picture. Then we can sieve them. Those larvae are very rich in protein and fat. We can dry them, extract the oil, and then we end up with 2 feed products, which is the press cake. It's very high in protein, comparable to fish, with more than 60% protein content, and the oil, which is also a very good feed component, specifically for fish and pig production. And the decomposed organic waste can be pelletized and turned into an organic fertilizer. Pelletizing it makes it very easy to apply and lowers the transport costs. Now, to understand what we are actually doing, it's important to understand what this black soldier fly actually is. And yeah, we call it a novel and sustainable livestock because we treat it like a livestock animal that we produce. It starts with eggs. Here you see at number 1, the eggs. They are very, very tiny. 1 gram of these eggs contains 35,000 eggs. And we put these eggs into an incubator to give them the right conditions to hatch. And then they hatch into baby larvae. That's what you see at number 2. And now for your reference that you can get a picture, in only 8 days. So those baby larvae is what we actually use to feed the organic waste to. And in only 8 to 9 days, they grow to the size in number 3. So it's enormous. And those larvae, this is what we turn into feed. But the problem is, by turning the larvae into feed, we have to kill them. So the challenge with this is that we need a constant supply of new baby larvae that we can use to process the organic waste. So what we do, we don't turn all of them into animal feed. Around 10% of those larvae are left to further develop into pupa, what you see at number 4. From these pupa, the adult flies emerge. We keep those adult flies in cages. They mate, lay eggs. We can harvest the eggs, and thereby the cycle starts over again. And by doing this, we create a whole new local circular economy that utilizes organic waste from the city and thereby lowering the costs of waste management for the municipality, that puts out highly desired and scarce agricultural inputs that supports the local agricultural sector, and that creates local jobs for Uganda's youth. We can look a little bit in more detail to our products. So the press cake that I mentioned before, the Pro Feed, it goes for 3,700 shillings per kg. It contains more than 60% protein, has a very high protein quality as well, and studies have shown that it improves animal health and also the quality of the animal products. If you feed, for example, chicken, if you feed too much fish to the chicken, it will end up tasting like fish. No one likes that, I guess. And actually, larvae, it's the most natural feed that chicken can eat, because when they dig between the matoke, the local chickens, they won't find mukene in the ground, but they will find insects. The oil goes for 4,500 shillings per kg, and specifically for piglet and fish pellet production or fish feed production, it's a really good feed ingredient. It's it has a very favorable fatty acid composition, so it's just a good quality feed. And but it also finds application in cosmetics. There's a company in Singapore that uses it for facial creams, and you can make soap from it or use it also. You can turn it also into biofuel. And the fertilizer, how we call it, Fertilizer, goes for 700 shillings per kg. It is very high in plant nutrients with an NPK of 612. And what's also important is that it can be certified as organic fertilizer, and this is important specifically for the crops that are meant as organic produce for export to other countries, because they require also organic inputs. For example, organic coffee needs organic fertilizer. And what's great about this is that it actually has the ability to repair soils that are depleted, since it has a lot of organic matter, and it improves the soil health, it improves the soil microbiome, and also the capacity of the soil to hold water, which is becoming more and more important in face of climate change. Now, how does the feed compare to other alternatives? It's cost effective, and since we are producing it as an industrial process, it's we can guarantee a reliable supply that is not affected by seasonal fluctuations at a constant quality. It's a local product, and it has a high protein content and quality. And we have already proven the technical feasibility of doing this. As I mentioned before, we have a partnership with KCCA. We are running a pilot system in the city of Kampala, in the industrial area. So basically in the heart of Kampala. It's a 500 square meter warehouse where we employ 25 youth. And this is outdated. This is 2 weeks ago. Since October 2020, we have actually processed more than 520 tons of organic waste. Currently, we have a capacity of around 8 tons per day. We expect by the end of this year 10 tons per day, and then mid next year around 25 tons per day, just in this 500 square meter pilot. Now, one challenge that we had to face is the amount of waste in Kampala is not really the problem, but what's the challenge is to get this waste sorted to our facility. But there's an advantage actually in Kampala, because we have those big markets that generate in a short period of time high amounts of pure organic waste. So our strategy is to take this organic waste before it can even be mixed with other waste sources. Because sorting waste after it's mixed, it's very expensive and tedious. And we came up with a system of doing this. Basically, we have our teams on the markets, for example, Nakawa market. And it can be done by a team of 1 or 2 people, because what they do is they set up 2 piles, one for organic waste and one for non-organic waste, keeping it very simple. And what they do, whenever the market vendors come to dispose waste, they look into their wheelbarrow or whatever they have and tell them, drop it here or there or sort it out. And then you end up with a big pile of pure sorted organic waste and a small pile of non-organic waste. And the good thing about this is that with this system we can seamlessly integrate into the currently existing waste collection system. Because for the waste collector, it doesn't matter if they load unsorted or mixed waste or sorted waste onto their truck. So what happens is the waste collectors, and it doesn't matter if it's a private waste collector or KCCA, they come to the market, they load the big pile of pure organic waste on their truck, and the only thing that changes is, instead of bringing it all the way 16 kilometers to Chitesi, they just bring it to our facility, which is 2.5 kilometers from Nakawa market. And this is also very interesting for private waste collectors, because the reduction in transport and transport costs directly translates in higher profits. Now, the question is, how can we scale this system to process sustainably more and more waste of Kampala? And therefore, it's important to understand the actual process a little bit more. Basically, we can break it down into 3 steps. The first step is waste pre-processing. This means the organic waste arrives at our facility, we shred it to reduce the particle size, we adjust the moisture content, and we also adjust the nutritional value, composition of the organic waste by adding small percentages of other substrates, just so that we can guarantee a standardized production of the larvae. And the output of this is a pretty standardized organic waste-based rearing substrate for efficient production of the larvae. Now the next step is the rearing. This is the step where we actually feed the organic waste to the larvae and they process it and decompose it, and where we then harvest the larvae and turn them into animal feed. And the third step is the breeding, what I mentioned earlier on, where we keep the adult flies in cages inside a greenhouse, harvest the eggs, put them in an incubator and get a constant supply of baby larvae that can process the waste. Now, when we look at the location of where to put up this system, there are different factors to consider. On the one hand, if you are inside the city, you have the advantage of being close to the source of the waste, which reduces the transport costs. But on the other hand, space and specifically production area is pretty expensive if you are inside the city. So by breaking and separating the different production steps, we can basically get the best of both worlds. So what we are planning to do is to have a transfer station for waste in Kampala, so that we are close in the close to the markets and to the waste sources, where the waste collectors can bring the organic waste, and where we will pre-process it and turn it into the organic waste-based rearing substrate for the larvae. Then we can set up the actual processing, the large-scale processing facility a little bit outside of Kampala, for example in the industrial parks, where a lot of space is available, and the rearing substrate is brought to these facilities where it is fed to the larvae and where the products are actually produced. And we can also have the breeding separate in a greenhouse, even a little bit further outside of Kampala, which also allows us to have more control about this very crucial part of the production process. Now, our impact can be quite tremendous. We calculated that for KCCA, this system has the potential to lower the costs of waste management by 85%. Now, it's not just the transport costs that are very important when considering the costs of waste management, but also the landfill itself is really, really expensive. It's extremely expensive to build the landfill. It's valuable land that is lost, and it's also expensive to keep it running. And afterwards, once it's full, the land can't be used for a number of years. So every ton that is diverted away from the landfill and doesn't end up there really saves a lot of money in the long term. Then it is also a very sustainable approach. Landfills are the third largest source of human-made carbon emissions, and studies have shown that our process can reduce the carbon emissions by 70% compared to other systems, for example, normal composting or landfilling. Our feed products can reduce the feed costs for local farmers by around 37%, and a fact that can't be stressed enough is that it's 100% local value chain that we implement. So all the inputs are local and all the outputs are made locally. One example that I like to give is currently big coffee companies are importing organic fertilizer made in the Netherlands from organic waste to Uganda, when we can actually also do it here. So we plan for the next 2 years to have to help making healthier communities in the city by cleaning up 10% of Kampala's waste per year, to produce enough agro inputs to feed 500,000 birds and fertilize 12,000 acres of land per year, and to create more than 2,000 jobs directly and indirectly along that new value chain for Uganda's youth. And we are an international, very dynamic team of 28 people. We are all very young, and more than 50% of us are female. And I think this system is ready to fly. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy about answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Phil, for a wonderful presentation. Let's clap for him again, ladies and gentlemen. This is good work that you're doing, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are inviting you to air out your questions, comments. We're going to move a microphone around. We're going to take them in fives. We have them addressed, then we take another set. Who's the first one? Doctor, I see you're itching. Yes, let's have a microphone moving around.
Thank you, Rodette and the presenters. I think Edison is near here, he will hear me well. What are the causes of waste in Kampala, or in Uganda for that matter? I noticed somewhere in the report, but it should have been in this presentation, about the culture. Our cultures promote food waste. If you visit me, and you finish all the food on the plate, then you are in trouble. I will assume you are not satisfied. So for me to be a gentleman, I must leave some portion to show you that I am okay, even if I am not. What does this mean? It means they will serve you more than you can take, so that it becomes waste. Intentionally, because they don't want you to finish their food. I hope in the group discussions, we are from different parts of Uganda. I don't know whether this culture is everywhere like that. We bring this point up so that in terms of awareness raising and so on, this issue can be deliberated on. Even if when the food is not enough and they know a visitor is coming, they will cut the biggest bunch, slaughter the biggest cock, and when you are only one person, you cannot finish this food, of course. So it's something we need to look at, whether culturally we can change or we cannot, to ensure that if every family does that, you can imagine how much food waste we shall have in the process. Even if we have the technologies, we have consumer choice, we have all those things. But in terms of culture, this one becomes an issue. And I hope it can come out. It's okay in the report, but in the context of how we discuss now, to see whether in that report, that particular point has been taken care of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. I hope our presenters are noting these questions down. Phil, Saturator, Edson.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and the presenters. I'm just wanted to have made an observation, presentation number 2. It was a good presentation. But as the doctor has already hinted, if you look at all this, we are talking about good technologies for consumer choice and food wastage. The issue of mindset change is very critical. And that's why I would have loved to see in that presentation, maybe it's in the report, when you come to the causes of food waste at a household level, the timings of food, the timings, the timings, the time for when, okay, the timing of taking the meals. You see, here in Uganda or in Africa, meals are taken at any time. And in most cases now, if you go to homes, you find people take a lunch around 3 or 4 p.m. But there's a culture that which is inbuilt that you have to take lunch and supper. Then again, you find by 7 o'clock, supper is also what, coming. But the food is not calculated. You know, like where I come from in Tesoland, if a male person start frequenting the kitchen, you will be called the names. Because if people have taken lunch and you are the head of the home and you are the one who buys, people have taken lunch at 3. Maybe they have prepared 2 kilograms of portion. Then again, suppose they prepare 2 kilograms of portion. You see? You will find in most cases at the household, the wastage of food occurs during evening hour, during supper times. Lunches people will always try to clear, but supper. So as I was urging that I think we should also think of when we shall be doing our advocacy, the timings of the time we take the meals. Because sometimes you can find, if you're a worker and you agree that I think supper we should take at 9 p.m., that will accommodate than people taking supper at 8. Again, when you go, they will, they don't know whether you will eat or not because they are forced to prepare the meal at once. Due to the poverty around, you cannot, they are interested in saving a charcoal. So when they prepare food for people at 7 o'clock, they prepare for everybody. Some of us, when you go back home, you find the food is cold. They don't have the warming water facility. You are forced to throw that food away. Then, also, in the same report, in the same presentation, there is something I feel does not come out very properly. That's the under storage. When we talk of population of the traders, far exceeds the storage capacity of the markets. I think it would be better in the body of the report if we brought up that thing very clearly so that whoever, the consumers of these reports, some people may pick interest and want to invest in something. So here when we're talking about the capacity, I think we should look at we should include the facilities. You look at the market now when we're constructing the markets. We are only interested in the space. But in reality, if you go to some of the developed countries, markets are planned that they have what somebody talked of the cold rooms to cater for some of these perishable goods. So when we are talking about the capacity of the market, let us capture the word facilities. And also, there is in the report, when according to your presentation, I hope in the report it is clear when you have done a study. So we wouldn't like a situation to happen in one of the markets. You be specific which market, because you have given very good data. It was even in, I think it was in the sort of a pie chart. It's a very good data, but you are saying in one of the markets. Why don't we mention that market where the research was was done? Because this was a study. It will help. Then we also, in the same report or during that presentation, when you talked about the absence of food waste regulations, here we must come up very, very clear. Absence of food waste regulations. What exactly are we referring it to? We are looking at the waste at household level. You are looking at the wasting at market levels. These are the markets we have. Now, when you talk about the regulations, well, it must come out very clearly. Food waste regulations. What are you referring to? What type of regulation? Finally, as I said earlier on, in whatever you are doing, when you will be giving some recommendations regarding the interventions, keep in mind the issue of mindset change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope Edison, you've taken those comments. You're noting them down. Yes, we have Thompson. We have our guest of honor here, representative of Thompson. I think you should go in
Good
order.
afternoon again, everyone. My name is Pamela. Two questions. One goes to the Arcadia suits on the hotel waste, and thank you for enlightening us about how the hotel is going green. One time, I was watching something on a food channel that had a competition between hotels on how they recycle food, and this was leftovers, so to speak, that they would recycle into another product and still feed the guests. I'm not sure if that's allowed or the guidelines accept that, but it was not in Uganda. It was in one of the countries, I think in Europe, but they were recycling food, and it seemed like this food was still good to go. So could you highlight that? Maybe you don't want to expose that, but apparently it does happen. But if it happens in a sustainable way, then it's also good to know. And related to the mindset change, even in the hotel industry, is people waste food, people don't finish food, but we are very shy to ask for food to be packed. And yet this is food that probably if we are having dinner at the hotel or lunch at a hotel, then it could be used as dinner at home, and so we would not need to prepare dinner at home. So is that something that hotels can encourage? Because there are some hotels where if they see a considerable amount of food on your plate, they actually pack it for you. So that's something hotels could do to guard against waste at that level, and have this whole mindset change about leftovers. Then there's a question to Protein about the KCCA partnership, which I think is quite interesting. I'm wondering to what extent does KCCA support Protein? Do you share the transportation costs? Because I imagine you're reducing the cost of transportation. In terms of do they provide funds, for example, for these people who you hire to to guide people into the disaggregation of the waste in the market? And I mean, it's a mindset change is a process, but for how long will we keep having to have people to tell people this is organic, and yet they can read and it's labeled? So just ideas about how to improve or increase sensitization around the waste, because it's definitely, we see it everywhere in the markets, so much waste, but again, it goes back to, I think what the survey mentioned about, storage infrastructure, cold room infrastructure. If those are not addressed, then we will still continue to see the wastage we have. Because if people can't afford cold room facilities, they have no option. Most of these markets have very, very small areas with high humidity that just can't, vegetables, fruits can't survive even more than 2 days in those kind of conditions. So again, to the ministry that is here, the policy makers, this is something that has to be emphasized if we are to think about the entire food value chain around waste management. Thank you.
Maybe just to add on, she has asked very wonderful questions. To Protein also, just you need to tell us whether you're also involved in carbon trading. Now that there is reduction of emissions in between there, are you involved in carbon trading? Yes. Thompson, the next person.
Thank you. One of the presenters identified, okay, even the last one identified the challenge of the waste handlers mixing the waste. People at household level they take the initiative even at market, in market, some markets to segregate, but these guys they come and mix it up as they are taking it away. I think this is a very big problem that I think it needs really to be taken up as not just a recommendation, especially in waste management regulations, but as one of the areas that when it is violated, maybe there are penalties. Because when you look at Chitezi and other landfills, we are always looking for land to landfill. And now the study is saying 90% of the waste is organic waste. Yet we know that we would have less of waste, actually we would have less of Chitezi. Imagine now, during COVID, people had adopted urban farming. People were producing greens and so on, some food in their backyards. And maybe they would use this waste with now this kind of initiative that is starting up. They would use this organic waste to make their own fertilizers for their small gardens within their compounds and so on. So we need to see if this process can influence a situation whereby even the waste handlers now, like NEMA issues the waste handlers permits to transport and dispose of waste. Can we see how we can influence that the handlers take segregated waste so that we can take advantage of the organic waste seriously, because there is use for it. Two, the other source of waste is which Edison talked about is at farm level. If you during, was it 2020 first lockdown, we have seen people pouring milk at farm level. Now we saw people feeding cattle, matoke to cattle, cutting it because the price was not worth it, right? So I think we have to promote technologies. I said that one of my jobs is about technology processing, but I think we are taking it lightly. When the president talks of science, some people think it is a joke, but it is, for me, I think it is one of the ways any economy really can transform. Because imagine if that matoke could be processed into a long shelf matoke, like flour. Even sweet potatoes, we can process them. Instead of them lasting for 1 month, they go for months. On top of what you're talking about cold chains. So such discussion, I think, will trigger even the scientists to be more innovative and even open the eyes of us or the communities to adopt some of these technologies that can preserve food. Instead of you cutting your bananas and you give them to cows, you procure a small machinery and you convert it into powder or something else and you sell it later. Lastly, I wanted to comment about the figures. The figures, I would wish that Edison, you share with us. You can share one on one if need be, on how you manage to come up with some of these percentages, like the 28% emissions, because that would help us. Because some people are claiming that most emissions, for example, are coming from industrial operations. So now, but now there is some information that is coming up that even food waste is bringing some good amount of emissions. So we would want to see if we can have this information and we compare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kasim. I like the way Kasim is always defending his ministry in some of his submissions. Thompson, let's, okay, let's go that side. Then we shall move this side.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Nathan, again, from Ministry of Water and Environment. Thank you, the presenters. I have a number of silent issues that I would have expected from the presentations that I want to bring to your attention. One is the unethical behavior by the food handlers. There has been an outcry in Kampala, people using formalin to preserve meat. They are trying to survive, to cope with the problem, but using unethical means. And I think now that we are talking of green technologies, and we have also seen the problem the other side, that the power is expensive, they can't afford the refrigeration. I think we should also be thinking of how do we address such challenges, because it is not, we are consuming something as food, but which can cause other associated health impacts on the consumers. The other one is the cost of food waste. When you look at all those volumes generated from the market, from wherever, and then we are saying it is all ending up in Chitez. In addition to talking of the emissions, how much does it cost the authorities to transport this waste to the final disposal? And I think this would guide the policymakers also to really come up with how do we partner with Profin? Can we even give them land besides just Chitez such that they can locate there? And we get a double benefit of generating the feeds, getting the manure, but also increasing the lifespan of the landfill as, you know, a triple benefit out of it. So what is the cost? So in the study, if we had seen that this volume that is ending at Chetezi is equally costing so much the authorities to transport it there, then it gives that other bigger aspect of the problem. And then the associated health associated health effects. When we talk of cholera coming out of garbage, which is biodegradable during the rainy seasons and so on, all this is still associated with food waste. If we find this also ending up in drainage systems, unblocking them, and also the floods and so on, you would see that the problem is even much bigger than what we have seen. But also the innovations. I see in it now we have some dried fruits, pineapples, bananas, and so on. But of course, also as part of our culture, you prefer eating a fresh pineapple than a dried one. Can we think of also changing that perception that something that has been preserved should also be preferred than one which is coming up with a lot of waste into the city? Dr. Patrick already talked about culture, but I would also add on the issue of attitude, perception, and mindset. To the middle income level people, some of these foods are cheap. Someone go to a market and buy buckets of mangoes that even they will not consume. And you say because you can afford and because it's the opportunity you've had to pass up country. Sometimes you go to the village, they give you sacks of potatoes because they are for free. You put on the pickup. And all this ends up in the city and turns into a problem. Can we take only what we need and we leave the rest for others? Hotels. It is common for big hotels to preserve, but sometimes food goes bad and it is also served. So serving us food waste as food is also not, it's also a bad thing with hotels.
So we shall sample here at lunchtime and see.
We shall see at lunchtime, but you know, sometimes you bite some piece of chicken and you say that this one had actually gone bad, but it has been served to you as food when it is actually food waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Nathan talked about Chitezi. I don't know if we have someone from KCC here, because I know that KCC has purchased land even further than Chitezi for a new facility. So the costs might be even 3 times more for transportation of waste to that facility. Yes, we have Simon here.
Yes, thank you. I think mine is more of a comment and two proposals. But I think in Uganda, people, let's be fair. I think we lack conviction. That is Uganda's problem. We lack conviction. I would want to agree with one of the presenters there. We are very pregnant with the policies and regulations, but we fail to give birth. So many out there, but we fail to give birth. We have all these things in our action plans. Go to the government thing, your action plans. Change management, sensitization, capacity building, skills. They all sound very sexy and very nice, but so for me, I think I would want to agree with my colleagues who have talked about mindset change. But I think there's something more we need to do beyond mindset change. We need to change the hearts and the minds. I think that's what the problem is. You leave somebody whose heart and mind has changed. That is someone who does better. So I think for me that is one of the major challenges I see with some of these good policies we have. This is to Edson. I don't know whether you mentioned the technology used in harvesting or something I missed out. But I think it may have an implication on how much food is wasted. Do we use the appropriate technology to extract out all this food when we're harvesting? Because yes, you may take 80% of it, but 20% of it remains where it is. So do we use the appropriate technology to harvest everything? I think an example is in the sugarcane industry. I don't know whether what are those machines called, are able to extract out those tubers and maximize it. And also, I don't know if your scope managed to look at schools and the food waste in schools. I think looked about hotels, but it didn't cover schools. It could have been also an area where there's a lot of food waste. And I think lastly for me, I want to borrow from Ministry of ICT. You know, they're saying, put your money where it hurts. Let people feel it. They have what is called an innovative fund under Ministry of ICT. And every year, they have a competition for people to come and develop systems. And we are beginning to see traction. Actually, currently, right now, Uganda's new procurement system, EGP system, is now from a local developer. We abandoned the one from Turkey, from European Dynamics, because there was some kind of innovative fund. I wish I would see something like this in all ministries, so that tomorrow, if we're saying, let us see what innovative technologies are there to manage food waste, and we see how people compete. So once people come up with something, then we replicate and we develop. I think something that would push us further. So we need something that is real for this country. Otherwise, we may end up lamenting. Thank you.
Thompson, we have Dr. Evelyn there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, presenters, for the presentations. We have learned a lot. I will begin with the Acadia. I've never been to your hotel, but I think we have a lot of food losses in 3-star plus hotels. You rarely see food loss in downtown hotels. Sometimes we come to your hotels stressed, but we want sometimes to take our food. There is a bad culture in Uganda whereby most hotels don't allow us to take our leftovers. I've been to countries whereby in a dining, usually you see how do you call them? Those containers, those aluminium containers. Yes, for anybody who wants to take his food home. But again, there are some hotels in Uganda where you are not even allowed. If I have paid for the food, why don't you allow me to take? We have seen situations where someone like Nathan takes a girl out. She doesn't want to know that she eats a lot. Nathan has bought her a full fish, a big tilapia with the chips. She doesn't want to eat like a thief. She doesn't want to show him that really, but she wants to take it. please, can you put some measures in place so that I can always pack my leftovers? I think it can reduce on the food wastage in hotels. Yes. Then to Philip. Yes, Philip from Protein. Thank you. When you are referring to garbage, I felt that most of it was from crops. And I felt that in Kampala, one of the nuisance places is the abattoir. Have you ever tried garbage from the abattoir? I feel that it can give you quicker results because it has a lot of proteins. Then lastly, not lastly, I think it is Simon who said that we lack conviction. Maybe it's high time we started as government mostly to solicit for the private sector to invest in areas where we can't. It's very rare for us to do so. Maybe because of not planning comprehensively. Because I'll give an example. Markets. Most of the modern markets. I don't know if you went to Wandegea. It's a modern market. Because the gentleman was wondering if there is a cold chain for products. Owino is worse. I've seen how they handle products in Owino so that they don't rot. It's very bad. Someone has talked about formalin. But our markets should have such. But transporting of our goods is so bad. Look at that matoke. The way they do it, it lacks aeration. You know, the way they pack it, it's not aerated. In the old good days, people used to cut clusters. You remember? At least those ones used to be aerated. But the way they pack, they would transport most maybe fish in agriculture is the one which has some transportation along the cold chain, but the other sectors don't. We need to do something about it. Then there is another bad tradition in Uganda of not giving people free food. I think I've only seen it at All Saints Church. Members of the All Saints Church usually take, on Mondays especially, food which is about ripening. And at around midday, you see people picking it. Do they call them food banks? I don't know how they call them. But in some countries, either you get it at a very low price or you get it for free instead of throwing it to the. We need that tradition. Lastly, there was it's a recommendation which Edison should consider is about preservatives. There are different preservatives for different foods. For example, for bananas, we see bananas coming all the way from Costa Rica to Finland. And they arrive in Finland and they don't lose a single banana. There are some bacteria. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. If we can, scientists, maybe narrow nose. We interest the sector, the narrow sector and the private sector to sell people who produce bananas, pineapples, to use those bacteria. Do they call them antifreeze? I don't remember the name. But once you open the product to a lot of oxygen, it starts, ripening. I think it should be a recommendation because we lose a lot of products during food handling, storage, and marketing. Then presentation is also another issue never talked about. Kalerwe was the worst, but you know what is Kalerwe? You find onions just on the ground. Then they pick all mothers of pathogens. In 2 days, the onions are rotting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now let's first have responses to those. Then we shall take another set of questions. Thompson, let's first give Mr. Chirete from Acadia Suits to respond.
Thank you very much. I'll begin with our boss. I'll call you our boss because if you had not invited us, mindset. I'm not happy because the COVID came, but COVID has brought some awareness. And I'm assuring you that mindset is beginning to change. I don't think now people are wasting food the way they used to waste before COVID. Nevertheless, we have to build pregnancy of policies and regulations in our country. I can assure you, out of this meeting, don't get tired. Talk about how many policies we have on the books which are not being implemented. Maybe, again, someone somewhere will pick interest. Now, I want to go precisely to specific question about packing food. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes maybe as a client or as a consumer, you are not aware that you have your rights. But your rights are also limited because this is business. For instance, as we are here, if we go out because UNEP has booked lunch and they make a buffet, at the end of that buffet, you are free to pack if you want. But if they tell us that it is an open buffet and there is another group somewhere, other clients are coming also to utilize of the same buffet, kindly, they are going to charge you. And they'll tell you, no, don't. I don't know if I'm clear. Let me repeat. If you go for a function and you have booked for your specific group, it is your right. And don't be shy to advocate, to demand for your right. Tell them that we booked this and please pack for me. They will pack it for you, free of charge. But if it is an open area and other people are coming, like I want to apologize first of all, ma'am. Maybe the time you went to Arcadia, they were being urban set, there were other clients moving in. But I'll take into consideration, and due to public demand, I request you come and I'll pack for you. Now, about segregation, ladies and gentlemen, this one, if we are to end it and we stop lamenting, a colleague and a member has presented here, penalties should be there. They should be enforced penalties. Penalties even on small things. I've given you an example that they invited me, Rwanda Development Board, to set some standards. But if you threw a bottle somewhere, everybody is sensitized. They will follow you up to where you are going to stop, and penalties are there. So it is high time elders who are here and the law enforcers, penalties should be the talk of the day. And something was mentioned about unethical behavior. One time I was presenting with some colleagues in the Ministry of Health, and I gave them a case study that you just look, now they have changed. But if you go to Mulago, as you come out, there is some sewage flowing, there is funny, those days not now, and somebody is selling chapati here, somebody is selling banana there. So I was asking them that now, where did the health inspectors go? How do you allow something is being done here and something is flowing there? Does it require really rocket science? It takes me, at one time we had a honorable minister, he's still honorable remains honorable. He promoted Rolex. Do you know what befell of Rolex? Because everybody was turning into making Rolex because of the unethical behavior. The eggs, the way they are done, the hands, the way they are done, the chapati, the way it is done, it became a disaster. People started falling sick. I always give an example. The most common snack in Uganda today is chapati. But have you ever been there when they are making chapati? Allow me remove my mask. When they are making chapati, either in a saucepan or in a basin, somebody does what he does and he feels, he posts it there, he comes back to chapati. He touches. I'm telling you the reality. That's why I said, allow me. I apologize if I need to. Now, that is part of unethical behavior. Look at the muchomos on the roadside. Somebody is cleaning it, he looks at it, it looks like creme caramel, and then he touches. Now, these are things which have to be enforced. I don't want to spoil your appetite. Let me just answer some questions. Protein, I'm volunteering to be your ambassador, free of charge. Recycling food. I was coming to, I had chronologically arranged it, but let me jump and come to recycling food. Now, food is recycled in a number of ways. If you have the right equipment, and you have the right attitude, that food can be recycled. For example, rice is one food you can recycle 40 times, chicken and others. But if the machines and the equipment are not there, that food will give you a running tummy because it was not properly kept. If you look at what is the most favorite dish today on an open space, open market, is pizza. Pizza was invented by my brothers, the Italians. Pizza is composed of mainly leftovers. Eh? You can get this and that, and you make a pizza and you are there murdering pizza like anything. But you are murdering what? Leftovers. Only it is the attitude in mind. But now if you are going to recycle, and that's why for me, if you want, I'm not very good at rice. Because the rice, I can assure you, they can recycle it 40 times. That's why you find they have done this, I taught this. I don't want to spoil people's appetite. But be careful. You can only recycle food if it is properly kept and you warm it properly, and then you are able to serve. But where you are going to touch with our attitude, bad habits, you touch your face, you touch everywhere, you touch the food, you'll take that food, but you are going to have challenges. So, why do we recycle food? It's business, and it's one way of also managing waste. Okay? But if it is abused, then it should become a penalty. I don't know whether I've tackled that, but I'm observing some protocols. So, this is a hotel, and as you realize, why don't I really cease fire here for now, in the interest of time?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Curator. Thompson, let's give Philip now.
Protein, what I was trying to say, and I said I'll be your advocate, free of charge, if there's anything for free. Many people should really, if your message reaches many where this waste is being disposed, and you sensitize and they buy in, this is the way to go. And I want, because I was also reading some literature somewhere, when you are presenting there, maybe tell them that even those flies you are going to export them, and you'll find the people are ready to sell to you that rubbish, they are ready to sell to you that waste, because at the end of the day you are going also to generate. We have to keep the chain flowing. You have to motivate them. And maybe for the policymakers who are here, I would suggest that at the end of this conversation we are having, see how you are going to feed in the SDGs. Maybe when government and policymakers know that whatever we are discussing will assist in the sustainable development goals, maybe they will move that direction. All these things we are lamenting about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Curator. And if you read your report at the beginning, it introduces that this is Sustainable Development Goal 12, and you're looking at 12.3. So, yes, that answers it. Yes, Phil.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thanks for the warm words. I appreciate it, even though for the next weeks I won't touch Rolex. I must admit. No.
No, you can buy it from a good place.
Yeah. So there were a range of questions, which I really appreciate. The first question was regarding our partnership with KCCA. We have an MOU with KCCA. It's a pilot actually, and it's pretty straightforward. KCCA gave us the 500 square meter facility where we are right now, and committed to supply us with organic waste, and we will do R&D and set up the system that can process organic waste on a large scale in a sustainable way and lower the costs of KCCA's waste management. And we appreciate it very much. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with the amazing DED of KCCA, and we told him what we are doing. And when he heard that, he said into the room, we have a huge problem with organic waste. It costs us a lot. This can potentially lower the cost, so we save money, so we don't have to think twice, but support this. And this level of support is very encouraging. Now, if we look a little bit deeper into the detail, you will find problems that you probably wouldn't think of at the beginning. So first of all, it's a very right now it's just a very simple system that's happening. You go, the collectors go to the market, they pick it up and bring it to GTC. That's so straightforward. Now changing this, that's difficult. Even though it's a small change that directly brings a benefit, it's just difficult. Here we talk about change of mindset again. At the beginning, we were also expected to receive sorted waste at our facility, but it just didn't work out very well. So the trucks came, it wasn't sorted at all. We had to reject it, and everyone was very frustrated because the people did some sorting, put some work into it, and then they were told, okay, now you still have to bring it to GTC. So we found out, okay, right now the collection capacity of KCCA, or in general, is only 40 to 50%. So this means the waste collectors are also overworked. So they don't have time to put in additional effort in sorting. So we said, okay, let's do this. We take care of the sorting. And now it works very well. Since a year, we haven't rejected a single truckload of waste that came to our facility because we said, okay, can't happen again. If you need to reject, it has to happen at the source. Now, when we talk about mindset again, even if you look at the private sector, private operators, you might think, okay, it's so straightforward. You can calculate your costs of driving to GTC. The roads are bad, your truck has much more wear and tear, you're stuck in traffic. If you bring it to us, you can utilize your truck much more. Probably you can do 3 trips with the same truck in the same amount of time. So you might think, okay, that's so straightforward. Private sector is interested in it. We had some meetings and they also understood it. We said, okay, we take care of the sorting at the market. And then what we can do is you take one tour where you go from location to location, pick all the unsorted waste, bring it to GTC, and then you pick all the sorted organic waste and bring it to us, which is by far the main fraction. Everyone agreed, okay, great idea. But then that's also something we didn't expect. And it's again about mindset. So we started with a market, and the market manager is so used to the system of paying for one truck. So when we explained to them, or actually the private waste collector tried to explain, your waste will still be picked, the same amount of waste will be picked up, and you won't pay more for it, but it will be picked up by 2 different trucks. She refused because she said, no, the truck has to be full. So that's also something which requires a change of mindset. And now also if you talk about value addition to the waste, it's a bit tricky because yes, it's a value chain, and now we hear a lot of talks about as soon as the waste is sorted, it's a resource, and yes, we use it as a resource, but it doesn't mean it's a commodity. It doesn't. And it's important to understand that what we do, it required a lot of R&D to actually bring it to a scale where it can pose a solution for the city to process large amounts of waste. But it's expensive. It requires capital investment, and it doesn't mean that we can just buy waste like that. And by the way, nowhere in the world there's a market for organic waste. Otherwise, it would be sold already. Also, we have to see that waste is not waste. Not all type of waste is the same. If you collect plastic bottles, PET, you collect 1 ton of the plastic bottles, you melt it down, you end up with 1 ton of PET that you can use. If you utilize organic waste, you get 1 ton. It's mainly water that you transport here, and you process it. You end up with probably 50 kg of feed that you can actually sell in the end. So it's important to not think too simplistic of this solution. The value addition and the benefits are there, but they are not there in a way that you sell the organic waste, but they are there for the farmers, for the local economy. They are there for lowering the costs, and I think that's also important to understand. Sorry, this was a bit of a lengthy response. Now, the second question was about carbon trading. Actually, we engaged some companies that specialize on that, and they were saying it's I mean, it's clear it saves a lot of carbon, but it's such a new process that at first the methods of quantifying the carbon avoidance and carbon sequestration still need to be established. So we have a research collaboration with Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and right now they perform a life cycle analysis of our system, and this will be basically a next step of really making it quantifiable. What is exactly the impact in terms of carbon avoidance through our process? Then the other question, which is a really good question regarding what types of waste can we use. Can we also use abattoir waste, for example? And in fact, we did quite some tests and experiments and research on that, and it works very well. We are right behind the city abattoir, actually, along Old Potbell Road. So we just took some of the waste from there and tested it separately. Also, fish offals work very well, but the problem is, to be honest, we are right now still a bit hesitant to use it, because in the end we produce feed and fertilizer. So you can, we still have to see what UNBS, for example, Uganda National Bureau of Standards, exactly, what their take is on this. Then also, when people see us using blood, for example, to feed the larvae, it's also a sensitive issue, because people could assume it's from pigs, and there's a huge Muslim population in Uganda, which then would be hesitant to actually use our feed products if it's associated to the pig industry. But in general, yeah, it's again also about mindset change. Did I miss any question?
I think that's it. Thank you, Phil.
Perfect. Thank you.
Let's clap for him, please. Yeah. Now let's go to Edson. Edson, your responses.
Thank you very much for all the feedback you have given to us. And I think they will greatly inform major structural changes in our report. I appreciate that. Like I had earlier said, I had questions to the team, simple questions to me. And the big questions from Dr. Message, I will leave them to the big team to address them, but I attempt to respond to some of the questions. Yes, I acknowledge that the issue of culture didn't come out very clearly, though we talked about it, but I think it's important in our report, the issue of culture comes out clearly, since it's one of the major drivers. Even from our discussion, we can say that culture is one of the major drivers of food waste. I think that one will have to look into it and see how we can strongly bring it out. The questions that came about that required us to be more specific about which regulations. We talked about absence of regulations. Yeah, that one we're going to look into it, because for this presentation we are trying to identify what are the challenges. So to specify which regulations are required, they will come in the next presentation, which I'll be talking about which interventions should be taken at any given stage or at a country level to address the problem of food waste. And some of the regulations we bear in mind is an example of where restaurants cannot share unsold food. We don't have standard for that. So it would be maybe illegal, or you'd be held accountable if you share unsold food to food poor community and something comes up. But if there's a standard, there would be clear provisions and guidelines that would allow hotels to share leftovers of a certain standard with communities that are food poor. So those are some of the regulations we shall maybe look at, maybe regulations that require places to segregate. So those specific will come in the in a report we are giving interventions that will address food waste. Yeah, there was also a question of understanding how much does it really cost to manage waste, how much does KCCA put in. So we tried to come up with some figures, but figures were just costing the food waste. But that information is available, publicly available from KCCA. I think we need to contact our contact person again to see how much the country spends, especially Kampala spends on waste management, and then maybe it can further inform policy to come up with further actions. Yeah, there is more questions that came from the production side. For example, they gave an example of harvesting sugar with inappropriate technology. Yes, we acknowledge, and we brought it up as lesson learned, that addressing food waste, don't have to focus at a particular stage. But we need to come up with a holistic approach that looks at all value chain. Because we noted that some of the food waste that we find in the market, the cause could be from the garden, from the transporter. So when we are addressing food waste, we need to tackle it holistically, looking at across the value chain. Another question was, we presented some case study, and we didn't come out clearly to specify which market, where we're mentioning one of those markets. So maybe to make it clear, the market was Natete. And I think the chairman of Natete is here to testify that actually we found traders bringing a case to the chairman of the market, complaining of someone selling to him products that are almost 3/4 of them are not good. The jackfruits, the yellow bananas, and the avocados. That, I think we need to make it clear and mention which market we got that information from. I think I would welcome the team to handle the difficult questions. And the mic should go to Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Edison, for responding to most of those questions. I think you have responded to almost all. Maybe I just add on something on attitude and mindset. Now, this is not, if you are to achieve that, it should not be like an event. It's a process. It is a process of changing someone's perspective, how someone perceives certain aspects related to food and any other things. We shall continue. This is the beginning. We can continue creating awareness, telling people about the impact of losing food, because most of us think when we lose food on a plate, that's what you have lost. But if you look at the life cycle of this food, then you start from the garden, transportation, labor, all those inputs, and then in the end you can discover that actually it is a loss, that it is a big loss. And also, if you bring in aspects of climate change, emissions, and so on, then the problem becomes bigger, that requires addressing. So, changing mindset and the attitude will need a process that we cannot say that it is an event or a singular intervention that will address it. I'm seeing Patrick's hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Silver. In these discussions we are having, if somebody who has not had dinner or lunch, and then he's seeing figures that there is so much food waste, they will cry from inside. How can we have a system where even those who don't have food, I don't know whether sharing, we don't call it food waste. I don't know what we call it. Some of the food is not actually not yet waste, but it has remained. How can there be a system of sharing with those who have not had a meal for the whole day. We are going to go out there for lunch, and people will heap the plates and so on. Please do it. Don't say I said it here. And then later it is thrown away. How does our discussion go towards that part of sharing food so it doesn't become waste? Is there a way we can put this into practice so that those people will not have to read? If they read our report and they find so many kilograms are going to waste, and for them they are looking for actually grams. So how can we integrate this into our system? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick. I think you've kicked off the next round of questions now. Thompson, sanitizer. Let's have Aaron. Aaron is just here. Silva. Aaron is here. Aaron, then
Edison, one of the questions that you asked was about if you reached schools. So maybe you need to tell us the scope of this study. Someone was asking, did you reach schools?
Edison, you're going to take it in the next round. Let's take them.
Yeah, thank you, moderator Richard, and for the presenters. I have two issues, and they go to Edison, and one of them has been hinted on by Dr. Patrick. Yeah, I was thinking about the specific contribution of all of food waste to the different problems which were listed, because I was thinking that reducing food waste may not necessarily increase access to food or food security, because some people are not able to access food because they can't buy it, like doctors say. So minimizing waste may not actually solve the hunger problem or those who are starving, in case there are no systems to ensure that what has been saved gets to them. So that brings me to the quantification of the contribution of food waste to the different variables which Edison highlighted. If we're able to do that, if it is possible, for instance, if we reduce maybe food waste by 20%, by how much are we going to reduce the 28 greenhouse gas emissions? By how much are we going to reduce those who are starving? By how much are we going to improve sustainability, maybe circularity, and all that? Because we could reduce food waste while triggering on another industry of circularity, which thrives on food waste and in the long term ends up even creating more demand for food waste because it's thriving on that. So if we're able to quantify these, I think maybe we can be able to tailor better policies on where exactly is the biggest magnitude of the food waste challenge. And then the other issue is still on the policy issues. How Edison, I don't know if you had some information on how big this could be a market failure issue between producing more than what is consumed, or that is the pre-planning you talked about. But if you have a lot of food being produced and then the waste, the vendors don't care much about the waste. I know they may not be able to prevent the waste, but if there are mechanisms which bite you if you generate waste, you may be more concerned next time not to generate enough waste. Maybe how much I'm paying for waste is cheaper than generating the waste. For instance, sometimes you find a signpost, don't throw here rubbish, fine 10,000. It means I can pay the 10,000 and bring tons of rubbish and pour there, because that is a market failure issue. The penalties may not really measure up to the challenge at hand. So do you have any information on this being maybe a market failure issue if you're going to look at it from the policy and economic perspective, besides the vendors, the lack of storage facilities and other things. Yeah, thank you.
This was the first one.
Thank you very much. Mine is a comment, observation, and also a request. Mainly because I know I represent the hotels, and I know that when it comes to food waste and waste management, we are some of the biggest culprits. Like the doctor rightly said, most of the waste comes from two-star hotels and above because of the nature of our business. The value chain of waste for us in the hotel industry is very big. It starts right from food production. You find that if a hotel wants to buy food from a farmer, every farmer wants to supply a hotel. That's their dream. But for you to be able to qualify to sell the food, okay, let's give an example of Irish potatoes or even tomatoes. What the hotel will buy, what they consider to be what the right product for them from the market, they have a lot of wastage which they will not take. So if you have a box of tomatoes, if a hotel picks, they will pick maybe about less than half of that, which they will pay for. The rest usually goes to wastage. There's different committees that I sit on. There's a platform on beef. There's a platform on Irish potatoes. There's a platform on rice growing, and this has been one of the biggest complaints. When a hotel orders for, let's say, meat, you'll be surprised at how much waste is left over. Let's say if a hotel orders for a goat, the way they want the meat cut, the way they will want the ribeye, steak, etc., etc., there is a lot of waste in that regard. So for us to be able to have a big impact, and one of the things that actually mentioned in schools is that, is there a way we can have a study that targets the big offenders, hotels, schools, to see how we can be able then to lead by example? The challenge we have is that it's going to be very difficult for a domestic consumer to make the change when you are right next door to somebody who is doing this and putting this in the trash every other day, and you can clearly see that. Unfortunately, because of the nature of our business, there is a lot of wastage. And again, I will challenge all of us in this room at lunchtime. By the time you stand up to leave the food, you see how much food that you leave on your plate. Or many of us book for functions, and then you have many no-shows. So you find that you have booked for a function of 50 people, but then you only have 30 people, and then the hotel is stuck with the rest of the food. Unfortunately, most of it is not able to be recycled. Again, from the nature of our business, the next client who comes and pays for a function doesn't want to know that part of the food that they are paying for is going to be recycled from the previous food that was left over. So you find that also there is a function today, leftover food. Function tomorrow, leftover food. Function the other day, leftover food. Yet another big problem and complaint we have is that while the hotel might be able to sort their waste for recycling, KCCA will come and just carry all the waste into one big pile. So you find that all partners are not speaking to each other. The hotel will say, for us, we are able to recycle. We have a place for plastics. We have a place for the food waste. But when KCCA comes with their truck, they are not going to come with 2-3 trucks. They come with one truck, throw everything there, and take it all to the dumping site. So there is need for all partners to speak to each other. There is also need for us, even as guests, even as champions of a program like this, to start demanding for the services that we pay for. I personally, if I go to a hotel and I have ordered, we've booked for a conference and I have leftover coupons, I will actually tell them we need to pack this food, either for our staff to eat at home, or the first option I'll ask my staff is, do you have friends, relatives who work around who can come and have lunch with us? We still have extra coupons. Many hotels will actually always honor, even if, like Paul said, even if there is one buffet station for everybody, you will simply go and say, Either I'm deducting this off my final bill or can I pack it? Hotels will honor that. What they will usually ask you to do is pay for packaging, which is usually 2K, 5K, and that is something that you can easily pay for. So, number one, as champions of people now who have more information in this regard, can we please start making it a point to say, we want to pack this food? Many hotels will honor that, especially if you say that I still have my coupons, I'm going to deduct it off the final bill as something that a product I've not consumed. Most hotels will be able to honor that. And so, for us as the Hotel Association, I'm really willing to work with the consultants to see how we can delve into a deeper study, because I think that we've just glossed the top by listening to Paul and his experience at Arcadia Suites. I think it's much worse if we go to the bigger hotels. We have hotels which actually are importing some of the food that we don't have. You go to a hotel and you find they have seafood. Uganda, we don't have an ocean. Therefore, all this has been imported. What is the carbon footprint on that? Many people don't eat seafood. So if you go to Sheraton telling you this is seafood night, many people say, if I eat this kind of food, I get a stomach upset. What happens? Most of that food, it's not easy to have it recycled. What happens? What is that? Where does that waste go? So I feel there's a need for a deeper study, especially into the big culprits. This could be the schools, the hotels, the hospitals. And then from that, we can use that information to be able to cascade it down to the domestic usage, which I feel would be much easier. Domestic is much easier to control than the commercial effects that we are bringing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Any other question? Thompson?
Thank you very much. Thank you to our presenters. I had two questions, one for Edson and another for Arcadia Suites. For Edson, I like that you have properly clarified the amount of waste in every market, but I think what did come out clearly for me is what is the cause of the variations in these different markets. For households, you were quite clear. It's based on the more income, there was more waste. How about for markets? I believe when we have an understanding of root cause, it also helps us to get better at the solution. My other question to Arcadia Suites was on, you talked about how you reduced the waste from the 2 deliveries to 1. I was wondering when this happened and also what caused this internal look on how you could reduce your waste. Was it a result of this project or was it a result of an internal audit? Yes. Then the other is just a comment, which I think for me was a positive comment for the report. I do agree with the look into the life cycle. Here we have looked at different aspects. We have talked about hotels, we have talked about schools, but one of the things I would like us to appreciate is the people in our markets and the people that we are talking about that happen to do these things are actually not, they are either having no education or very little education. So many of the things they are doing are for survival. So if we do not look at why they are putting in formalin in the meat, why they are still selling to somebody 3/4 food that's wasted, we do not, at the end of the day, we don't have a solution for them because they're basically trying to survive with whatever they're trying to do. So when we, in that regard, the life cycle aspect of looking at this, we should also look at how do we solve this other person's issue. I want to sell, I want to have an income, but how do I do that without affecting the other person who is going to purchase? So I think at the end of this, we should have a very good look. It's not just, for me, I feel it's not just policy, but also how do we affect every other stakeholder that is in this food market? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? We're taking one more. Thompson.
Yes, thank you, moderator. Mine is not a question, but it's an appeal or a call to protein. It's good. You are really on spot. You know, now in Uganda we talk of local economic development, and it has 3 pillars. There is economy, there is environment, and then there is society. But from your presentation, I'm forced to believe that you are really focused. But I'm also calling it that let us not forget the pillar, that's a society. Now that you are employing the people, what I'm referring to, you are handling these ways. It can also be hazardous ways to the health of the people that are handling it. So whatever we are doing, as much as we are looking at the economy, we are looking at the environment, let us also look at the safety of the people who are handling this waste. We have not interacted, but I think in the near future, now that we know you are in existence, we shall interact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's have responses. We can start with Protein.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the positive feedback. That's actually a really good point. When we talk about, for example, about jobs that we create, we really want to create meaningful jobs that are good and that are safe and also healthy. So we put a lot of effort into this. All of our employees get a very good salary, actually, which is way over the national average. We make sure that they all have health insurance. They all pay NSSF, even though some of them at the beginning they felt like, oh, you are taking the cash away, just give it to me now. But now they also understand that it's for their future. And we also, since it involves a lot of, for example, handling heavy machines, for example, we put a lot of emphasis on work safety, on PPE, that everyone wears the helmets, everyone knows how to operate the machines, and also that it's just a safe work environment for the people who are working with the organic waste. So, but thank you. So probably from now on I can make this more clear in the next presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Phil. For those that don't know where the facility is, it's in Bugolob. You can make an appointment with him next to the National Water Treatment Facility. You can make an appointment with him and he takes you for a tour there.
Once again, thank you for that good question. You wanted to know how we reduced, instead of taking waste twice and twachikola tutya. Now, first and foremost, I want to thank Uganda Cleaner Production. Once a time I was a baby, they taught me, I became a good student, and I'm a change agent. As a consultant, I go and train people. So I trained those people. Even when I'm not there, the colleagues who are there, they know that you must separate whatever waste that is generated in the property. And by so doing, it reduces on the cost where you'd have used a lot of detergents, a lot of manpower. Once people have changed and you try to align their attitude, the benefits will come. Now we are reaping. Instead of spending it twice, you spend it once. But how did we achieve it? Go back, sensitize the people. I've told you I'm a change agent. You can call me to any of your property, and this is courtesy of Cleaner Production Uganda. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Yes, Edson.
Thank you once again for asking more questions and giving more comments that would support our documentation. Yeah, I think Dr. Patrick Mwesige has advised us to think of how we can come up with structures that would allow areas that have maybe excess food to share it with areas that, or people that don't have food, or the people who are food insecure. But I think this is important information from Doctor, and it's going to inform our discussion tomorrow, because we know as part of our terms of reference as here is to validate and also improve the interventions that can help us address food waste. So we need to think about what we can do, what structures can we put what regulations can we put to enable people or areas with excess food to share it with people that are food poor? Maybe we could borrow from other countries what they are doing. They have like food banks where hotels could donate unsold food banks, but that one is supported by standards and regulations. Maybe we could borrow from there, but it's a very key important information from Dr. Patrick Mwesije that would guide our discussions tomorrow. We need to think about it and come up with measures that suits Uganda and Kampala in particular. There is a clarification that needed to be done on the scope. We didn't go to schools in particular. We are doing this for the first time in Uganda, and our focus was more on households and markets. Maybe if we could think of how we could upscale this, we could go to schools and more particularly on hotels who are biggest food waste generators. There was a question on emissions to get clarification of how we came to get emissions from food waste. We didn't do any scientific study to see what emissions come from food, but what we did, we reviewed the literature on the studies done in Kampala on emission sources. And maybe I can just give references on where you can find such data. Uganda, we did a greenhouse gas inventory, and we submitted it to UNFCCC. That's United Nations Framework, right? Something like that. Yeah, you will see that information, and you see how waste management is one of the biggest emitters. It emits methane, and scientists know that methane has bigger global warming potentials compared to carbon dioxide. So we can go there to get more information, especially for us, the industry who are interested in that area. Yeah, there's also where people can afford to generate and to generate waste because of market distortion. Well, I would say, Alan, we didn't go much in details to understand that scenario, but it's true, especially in bumpy seasons, that food is so cheap that people can afford to dump it so that they can prepare for the next season. But we didn't do more study into that so that we can get more insightful information that we could discuss with you here. Then there was also a question of why did we have more food waste in Kalewe as compared to other markets. When you look at Kalewe is like, I'd call it a market yard. It's the biggest market around, and most food that gets to Kampala passes through Kalewe. So all these other markets, most of them you find that they shop from Kalewe. So handling that volume brings in that deviation, big deviation of about 7.6 kilograms per trader. Two, infrastructure-wise, we go to Kalewe just like Dr. Evelyn Otaro told us. Food is typically handled on the ground, and you know what? No structures, like it's not even covered. It's hit by sunshine, it's hit by rainfall, so you expect large volumes of waste in that particular market. Unlike markets like Matete, with some infrastructure, though it's not sufficient. Markets like Kansanga, with some infrastructure, though not sufficient. So Kalewe has that big problem because of the infrastructure, and it being the collection center, and in most cases even it's waste not of its own causes. Food gets to the market when it's already distorted, and that's why they are emphasizing value chain intervention. That one we need to give it particular attention during tomorrow's discussions to see that we come up with good measures to support these markets, address the problems they are facing. You could remind me if there is a question I didn't look to, but I think those ones I noted down, I have addressed.
I think that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a wonderful discussion. Let's clap for our three presenters. Phil from Protein, Mr. Chireta from Acadia Suits, and Edison. Let's clap for them once again. I believe we have now earned our lunch, isn't it? Our energy levels are low, so we need to get them up again. So we're now going to break off for lunch. Our lunch is ready. And just before we break off for lunch, yes, Dr. Patrick, your hand is up. Yes? Okay. Just before we go for lunch, let's also clap for the moderator of the session. Yes. Thank you. Have a nice lunch. Before Dr. Patrick comes, let's agree on the time we're returning. Right now it's 1:24. Can we do our lunch in 30 minutes? It's not possible. 1 hour. Okay.
lower price product, which is usually poor quality. It could be then a big size panel, and then people think, oh, it's going to give me more power. It's all this illusion of the bigger size probably better, or the bigger the product would be. And we have seen a lot of big brands coming into the market because of size, yet actually in terms of quality. So in this solar kiosks, we are showing, testing potential solar. So these are also some of the ideas that have been brought to other information. This was kind of years ago at the time solar was really at that stage. And one of the things that it brought was people trusting technology and then them willing to buy their own technology. Because sometimes there's a lot said people don't have money. But we realized, that's why one of the questions I asked was what's the root cause? Because you'll find it's not that they have money, it's they need to prioritize what you have offered them. So priority is key in expenditures. We have spent time studying people's income and we realize people do have money, they just have priorities and yours could be on the bottom of the list and so they don't have money for your item. Simple hydro, which we implemented in the mountain, so you can generate electricity from a little running river next to your home. One of the other topics that are very key today is biogas digester. I will enter more in this later in the presentation. So these can be connected to pit machines, connect them to food waste, connect them to your farm and connect down and you generate energy. There's the productive use where this is the gasification technology. So in gasification, you're looking at waste. It could be rice husks, it could be coffee husks, it could be wood chippings. You're using that to generate electricity. All these are waste that you'll find are literally in our communities. There's also the waste box which can work in this gasifier. This we have piloted in Gulu, in a place called Pit. So awareness is also something we have done quite a lot with children. This was a presentation showcasing to the president the need for clean energy and about some solutions. So going into other things, there's the technical trade. At the end of the day, all these pictures here that we have for the technical trade, that was on solar PV here, there. And there's one on the left hand that books how to build an improved bookstore are all solutions that we need for clean energy. So there's a business trade. Let me just run through these pictures again. The verification audits, which is for energy efficiency, because you could also have waste in when we use energy in a building. So these are some of them. So there's also the waste from electricity, the type of lights we use in the industry, the machines we use. So there's waste literally in different places that we work at harnessing. So these are exhibitions where we show some of the one. This is the solar testing. Health test quality product. Have a twice have I actually purchased a quality solar system. Have I purchased quality batteries? Because sometimes they show me what to purchase. This is just taking that secondary stores. So now we have the horizons. Some of them have been us looking at fecal sludge. Fecal sludge is really amazing from the thing that we see what can you harness there. So at the end, it's really looking at all sorts of waste. We get energy from this waste.
you could use cassava which is about to go bad, some of that food waste, and instead use that as the binder. So all these are things, of course, that need a lot of awareness, but these are all technologies that we could, and ways in which we could use this clean waste and put into clean technologies. So these are some of the stoves. Of course, when we move to different types of fuel, then you're looking at different types of stoves. The benefit of the improved cooking stoves is that they're also reducing fastly, they cook faster, and they're also reducing on how much you are going to deforestate the environment. So we are having the environmental saving, as well as there is the fact that you are cooking faster, cleaner, with less smoke. So there are all these benefits. And if you're using briquettes from waste materials, then you're also having that double benefit that you're actually saving. So these we see are all ways that we could trickle down to what we have as waste. So these are some of these other technologies that work with those briquettes. Currently, most people use the traditional types, but these are all the different types that they could use that adopt. One of these, there's the gasifier stove at the top. I'm not sure if this could blink, but it's at the top left. So this works with maize cobs, and it turns the maize cobs into charcoal. So at the end, what someone has is, after they have sold their produce and they have maize cobs, they could actually use that as a fuel to put into a stove and cook. And then you have the double benefit that it actually, these are dual stoves. So you could use maize cobs, or you could use firewood. So there are definitely technologies that have been improved that can help us harness our waste. One of the interesting findings in a few weeks ago, we were doing some scoping on biogas, and we found something interesting which I think is very pertinent to today's discussion. I believe our colleagues from Kenya will probably have seen it. So we found in the markets in Nairobi, in a county called Gong, there was a biogas digester that was pretty much running on food waste. So they were harnessing all the waste from the markets and putting it into the digester and using that to generate electricity. So we find from this diagram here, I'm just showing the whole process of the digester. However, you could, the videos are also online on how they are actually getting this waste and putting it into a digester. And these digesters are, so this digester is not necessarily a fixed dome, which is under tubular that are built, but they were using this particular type of digester is a portable type. They call it what? Prefabricated. So for it, it can work using food waste, and you just have to keep loading it. Food waste that is cut into smaller pieces and put in there. So what we see from that particular trial, you find they have managed in that particular county to work on the waste, which right now we are finding is a challenge. So these are some of the examples we could adopt. So in this diagram here, you see in this digester we could have the cattle dung, which most people have appreciated, but then we can also have the food waste. So literally everything that we are saying can come out of the hotel, can come out of the market. We could actually put this to use and actually generate energy. And this energy, we could link it and power it with the cold chain, and actually have fridges that are running on this. So all these are opportunities that I think we should harness in this, and discuss further how we could pilot this in one of these markets. The gasifier I mentioned already in passing. We are looking at waste from maize cobs. This is not necessarily is not using your food waste, but you're looking at wood chips, you're looking at maize cobs, you're looking at rice husks, and and through a scientific process of pyrolysis, you're using this to generate electricity. So these, we already have demonstrations in Uganda here. We have gasifier plants that are running. There is one that was done by Pamoja, I think it's in Tiribogo. There is another one that we had in Gulu. So these are things which have already been implemented. But now the question is how much more? I think it's just the biogas on food waste which we have not yet actually implemented. But this is also a good point for us in this meeting to see how we can actually look at piloting food waste and generating electricity from it. So in closing, I just picked this chart to show the potential. At the end of the day, as of course from an engineering line, you're looking how much energy can I get out of food waste. So food waste is, it's a little low, but it's not too low. So we have the crop residues, second last, and there's also the food waste. The municipal solid waste is the food waste. So it has, yes, a minimum amount of energy, but then again, if we are computing that we are actually possibly just going to waste this off, this is still something we can harness and actually exploit, especially if the use cases have already been, if the other use cases have already been exploited. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was my presentation for today. Some of the challenges, of course, I have mentioned some. Of course, there are the financials. There is the distribution. There is the cultural issues. There is the low awareness. We have talked a lot about that. I think it starts with even us in this room first. You'll find we had a discussion at lunch, and there was the discussion of, even just now we know that everybody, there could have been someone who put some waste. There's the inevitable waste. There is the avoidable waste. So at the end of the day, there is always waste that we have. So there is always something we can exploit. The technical skills, of course, are things we can, in terms of the life cycle approach. Yes, I think it's a good time to take questions, or should I have another presentation?
Thank you, Lala. Let's give a round of applause. Wonderful presentation. We are open for questions. Edson, you have a microphone? She has made a wonderful presentation in relation to today's topic, and I believe we have some questions for her. And comments, yes. Thank you, Nathan. Any other question? And you should tell them that you're speaking from experience, since you are producing biogas yourself. Yes. Those of you who have visited Nathan, you know his home runs on biogas. Yes, Edison. Can we have the mic move around?
I've seen that you've done a lot of work in solar, and I would like to find out if there could be solutions or research that you could have done using solar, maybe to dry, to process, so that it can prevent the problem of food waste of the products that goes up bad very fast, the fresh products. I would like to find out if I've done some work in that area. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, you indicated that the the energy generated from municipal waste, which which constitutes of food waste, is less or is small. Just for my knowledge, I wanted to find out which factors determine the energy content in a given waste for for biogas. Thank you. Yeah, the waste you're using, how do you know that this kind of waste will generate more energy compared to this?
Thank you, Creek. There was a table with the estimates of biogas. I think 2, 3 slides back. Where? That one. All along, we are told that pig excreta had the highest amount of biogas, as the cow excreta usually comes when most of the methane has already left. That's what we are told. How come here the pig has the least biogas potential? You know, it is something new to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. And indeed, we have different, we call it renewable energies. Yes? So in the renewable energy policy for Uganda, we are supposed to have biogas around by the year 2017. I think we have passed it already. Yeah? And that's why we have a problem. But in a number of countries, especially, for example, Ghana, where we had extensive work on biogas, it is now part of the building code, as an example. So if you put up an estate, like these flats you are seeing around, the various washrooms there and so on are connected to a biogas plant. So that is the one people will be using in their cooking and so on. Of course, in schools it's also there, but some schools, I'm going to use a crude word, but schools in Ghana call it sheet food, and they are not ready to eat it. I don't know what it means, but if you use the biogas to cook the food, people think now it has passed through the gas into the food or something like that. I'm bringing out this in terms of awareness. What is the attitude of people in Uganda towards various renewable energies? Of course, one of them is that it is very expensive. And this recommendation that they remove some taxes and so on different types of renewables helps. But if you have the food waste, hotels, all hotels in Ghana must put up a biogas plant, and it is that one which will be used in their kitchens. And I'm sure many countries do that. In Nepal, when you have a toilet, bit ones, you all connect. If you don't connect, you're not connected to biogas, and so on. How shall we reach that stage where Uganda is saying, these are the policies, it's renewable one, but it's not comprehensive. These are the policies in terms of various renewable technologies. And here we have to mention that food waste is a renewable source of energy. Edison, am I right? Yeah, because the food waste are always going. If we look at it from that angle, anybody from Ministry of Energy here? We missed that one. Yes? So this awareness on renewable energies, there is a meeting going on COP26 in Glasgow. That's the talk they are having on these renewables. How can we promote this in our country? How can we help these people promote this in our country? So that food waste becomes one of the resources. be used. We are not going to waste food just because of that, but once waste is there, then we use it in producing biogas, then we are good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this great and insightful presentation. Now you have mentioned or introduced a few different methods and technologies to treat or utilize organic or food waste. And my question would be, which technology would you recommend for the treatment of the very fibrous part of the organic waste, like banana stems on a large scale, given that it's also very wet and contains a lot of water?
Okay, thank you. Philip, I think I did not, you said treatment of banana stems? You mean treatment in which case? Or you mean utilization? Well, in terms of, maybe I'll start from that one. In terms of utilization of stem, banana stem, I don't think I've come across research where we're actually looking at the stem. However, I do believe that it will most definitely work in the biogas digester where food waste is going. But in terms of we have never really gotten the stems and just put it into another technology and said, let's use it. But I do believe it would work with the food waste. Then for the comment on the slurry, yes, I didn't mention it, but thank you for adding it. I think it was just one of those silent things that I did not mention. So under all these, you find from the digester, you're going to get heat for cooking, you can get electricity for lighting, and there's also the bioslurry, which is really good for the farm. So you find that most people, in fact, you can literally build your circular economy. You have your cattle or your pigs, or it could be food waste. You're moving it to a digester. It's giving you heat for cooking. You could add some lamps and it's lighting. And then with that same waste, you're putting it into the garden. So it's amazing what just moving around what biogas can do and what you can get out of it. This you can even sell, the bioslurry you can even sell, and it is even much better because now there we're talking about organic fertilizer. So thank you for adding that learning content for everybody. Factors that determine the energy content. So that's it's literally different components have different amount of energies. For example, if I could give the example of the cooking technologies, if you're looking at even just the different wood, I think from I don't know if you may have the experience of different trees will give you different energy content, generally just by their natural composition. So what the scientists have done in the lab is they do the analysis. So there is a whole, there is an equipment that they use, and they are able to get the energy content from these different sources. So that's what informs those tables, and that's what informs the waste that people use. So it is not something that can be changed. It's more of the characteristics of the different produce. For example, banana stems we have not tried. You may find it has very low on energy content. Wood has the best energy content. That's why we have failed to. Energy content is from its natural composition. So at the end, it's always what we do is to just ascertain what energy content, and then from there you know what is good for cooking and what is not going to work. So it's like when you try to cook with stems, you see how quickly it would burn. It's because it does not have the amount of energy content you'd need. In a few seconds, you'd have it all burnt up. So that's pretty much the difference on the energy content. In terms of pig excreta and cattle, wow. At the end, I've seen several tables that have different energy content. I've not yet analyzed why some have more, but in terms of cattle has always exceeded, and that's one of the reasons why when you're starting a digester, they usually start it with cow dung. With the pigs, this particular table just had it that way, but you'll find that probably it's the difference of the labs or something. But that I've never known cow dung to have low energy content, because literally what the cow is producing is methane already by the time it has finished its digestion. The other question was about biogas in Ghana and the schools. Of course, at the end of the day, when we're talking about promotion, it goes back to awareness. I think we have had the same cases in Uganda. I mentioned one on using the fecal sludge. People have very low appreciation, and those are some of the challenges. Some communities have adopted biogas more, maybe because they're using the cattle dung, but when we were looking at it, some areas now, like the schools, you'll find some people are hesitant to use it. But in reality, it's really just pretty much in our mindsets, because if you think about it, the heat from there is not at all connected to the waste that was connected, and at the end, it's not even linked to the food that you're cooking. At the end of the day, a whole entire process has happened in the digester, giving you heat to cook the food. So I feel those are areas of the mindset change, the cultural aspects. You find a technology may be totally refused in a certain area, not because it's not usable, but because of a need for a mindset change, perceptions, attitudes, etc. For the country of Uganda, as you rightly put it, we don't have the people from ministry, but maybe someone else from another ministry could help us to. I think in terms of promotion, I would say even just, as I had mentioned earlier, I believe in both the top-bottom and bottom-up approach. So if we are talking about promoting energy, even us ourselves, I like what the gentleman from Arcadia Suit said, where he said, I'm an agent of change. So at the end of the day, each of us can live here, and we are an agent of change in our communities. And that is enough to spark a difference, because the other one will tell another one. At the end of the day, that's how, in a village, that's literally how the news moves. Of if a technology is good, it's because someone else talked about it to another person, and that's actually how we literally move technologies in communities. So if I'm saying promotion, I would say, can we leave this room and we are agents of change of renewable energies, agents of change of food waste reduction? If we could appreciate and find ways, I think by the time we reached lunch, people were a bit hesitant on recycled rice. But then if we don't eat the recycled rice, then we still have waste. So for me, I say, let's find ways of, if we are not ourselves promoting it, that means it cannot work. So I believe we should firstly be our agents of change of our technologies. Yeah, I think I've answered all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lala. Thank you, Lala. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I believe there are no more questions. Is there any other question? Oh, Lala, there are still questions. Yes. Okay.
They get the fiber for crafts, and then the other material is converted into briquettes. I think the recent video I've seen, they are even making t-shirts out of these banana stems, the banana fiber, and they are making a lot of products out of it. So the technology is also there for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. That's information. You can actually find them on YouTube and see the videos. Yes, let's have Teddy. Can we move that microphone? Where is Thompson? Yes, Teddy.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Just a follow-up question for Patrick Message. I'm just wondering how the salary in the Accra is managed from the different households. Is this done at household level, or do they involve the municipal council to collect this salary from the household level?
Okay, thank you. One was a comment from Nathan, and the other question is to Dr. Patrick. Doctor, you had the question? Maybe Ted, you go again.
About the biogas setting in Accra, the households, how are they managing the salary from the households? Is it managed by household level, or is it being done by the municipal council?
Doctor, she was wondering, like, suppose someone doesn't have a garden to apply that manual amount, what do you do? Would it become a nuisance to that?
Well, that's a fair point, but the way the biogas plants are, for example, hotels, they're just under there and there is a park, a car park. It's under there. So the sale which comes out is the way, in domestic, the way the construction, the way the model is, and it comes out. But in these big ones, you don't have that issue. Where you have, like in our septic tanks, how it works. You don't empty it up there. Well, it's always down there, and then you back. By the time you
have to empty, that's an extreme of a case. But there are a good way on how it works. I'm sure Clara can explain further on this. But the biogas plants I have seen, salary is not the major issue in the process. Making sure that you get the gas and it goes. They are big things. The whole car park here, underground there. By the time you reach that stage of having a problem, you would have cooked your way out. Even cooked yourself if possible.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Maybe just for information, we all know that municipal solid waste management in Africa, and in particular Uganda, is a nuisance. It is something that is a non-funded priority. It's considered to be a priority, but non-funded. There's no particular grant for management of municipal solid waste. So, because of that, we are trying to find many other ways of actually reducing municipal solid waste. We've talked about landfilling. It's very expensive to landfill. So any other intervention is very welcome. That's why when Protein comes up and uses black soldier flies in management of municipal solid waste, that is welcome. Because they're looking at the products that they're producing, and there is reduction of municipal solid waste. Now, production of biogas is another very important thing that we can actually take on. Because we are having a small piece of land, doing everything within that space, and there is no major big expense. And within NEMA has got a project together with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development with funding from Jeff through UNDP. It's a biogas NEMA project. And the approach has been that we've approached about 4 municipalities and cities and asked them to draft bylaws and ordinances to create a conducive environment for any kind of investor to come and invest in management of municipal solid waste, specifically using that municipal solid waste for production of biogas, which is used to run generators and produce electricity, which is sold to the national grid. So any intervention currently in waste management is very welcome, because we cannot go the path of land filling like we saw in the morning. It's very expensive. If you visited places in Africa that are actually doing land filling, there is a municipality in Durban that is producing electricity through land filling. It's very expensive. The calculations show that you spend about 1 trillion Uganda shillings per year to run that facility. Of course, the advantage is that it produces electricity which is sold to the national grid, but going that way is very expensive. So these kinds of interventions in management of waste, food waste, and all its products are very welcome. So this has been a wonderful discussion. I want to thank all our presenters for the day who have given us knowledge. We've been able to share experiences. So ladies and gentlemen, let's join our hands and clap for our presenters today. And let's clap for ourselves for being such a wonderful audience. You know, you've been very good, and I thank the organizers of this workshop. I believe our work today is done. I want to invite Silva. I don't know if it's Silva is going to. Yes, Silva, you're most welcome to close off this day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. In my opinion, you had actually closed. I don't know what to add. You thanked everyone and the audience. It was very active.